Svelte is a compiler, not a framework. Remember that. All right, welcome to this tutorial. We're gonna have some fun in this one and try out Svelte. Svelte is getting more popular and is kind of an alternative to, for example, React. I'm a big React fan, and to be honest, I didn't have high expectations when trying out Svelte, but man, I was wrong, because it's awesome, and to be honest, I was blown away. So in this video, we're going to build a small application that will fetch data from an API and display them in a grid. So it looks something like this, and if you have followed along in my other videos, you will see that this is the same design as I use when I create an infinity scroll with React. I don't have the infinity scroll here because this is just an introduction to Svelte. So we're going to get these names from the name API that's free, and we're going to display them in this list. And as you can see here, when I press, it reloads the items and display loading. And this could, of course, also be a loading spinner if you want to have that. So that's what we're going to build, a really small application just to get started with Svelte. So let's kick this off and start coding. Go inside of our terminal. I can break this one here. And we're going to start with a project completely from scratch. And the easiest way to do that is to use the command npx digit. And you may wonder what digit is, and yeah, in short, it's something that downloads Git repositories to your computer, so it helps us install Svelte from a predefined template. So npx digit Svelte JS / template, and we can call it, this is the name that we're going to name our project, Weben Svelte into. Yeah, something like that. You can call it whatever you want. So npx digit Svelte JS / template, and then your name of the application. And as I told you in the introduction, Svelte is not a framework, it's a compiler, and that has some advantages. The biggest one is that it's going to compile the code down to clean JavaScript without any dependencies on a framework. So that will make your application super fast, and it's not dependent on something else. So Svelte is a compiler. It will compile everything when you build it instead of doing stuff in the browser afterwards. So if we list this directory here, you can see that we have Weben-Svelte-intro here. And I have some other stuff here that you won't have, but that's fine. So you can navigate inside of that folder, Weben-Svelte-intro. And then we simply run npm install. And that will install everything we need. But there actually is, I think there's only one dependency, because as this is a compiler, we don't have a lot of dependencies. So that's our application. We can open up our code editor. And we can open up the package.json. And I will bump these ones up a little bit so we can see what we're doing. So you can see we just have one dependency, and this one is for serving your application when you develop it. So that's the only dependency that we have. Then we have rollup and Svelte. Great. Then we have a source folder, just as we have, for example, in React. So we have a main file, and this one is going to display the application. You can see that it put the app component in the body here, and it's sending some props. We're going to talk about props later. So this is if you want to initialize it with some props, but we don't actually have to do that, so we can remove this one. So it works kind of like React. I can just compare to React now because I actually haven't used Vue or Angular. I'm specialized in React. I wanted to become an expert in React, so that's what I've become. And that's why I don't have any experience of the other frameworks. And from the app, you can see now they're just displaying a hello name. Yeah, and of course we can actually, let's have this for now, save this again, go back to our terminal, and we can run, I can clear the console, and we run npm run dev. We can start this up to see that it works. We reload this one, and you can see that we have just a regular hello world here. So back to the code. This is the prop that they send in here, and now we can delete this one. All right, save the file. And we have the app.svelte, and we're going to do most of the coding inside of this one, but we're going to create another component also, and a little JavaScript file for our API. And that's what we're going to do first. So inside our src folder, create a new file that we call api.js. And this is a free API that generates random users. So it's great to use when we test out stuff like this. So export const get users. It's an async function. We're going to collect the users in a const that we call users. We await. And we await again. And I've told you this in other tutorials. That's because we're going to convert this to JSON, and JSON is also async. So first we await the API call, and then we await when we convert it to JSON. You could do this on separate rows instead, but I do it in one here. So await, fetch, parenthesis, and quote, https:// randomuser.me/API/ results equals to, we're going to grab 100 results. So we have it to equal to 100. All right. Then just below here, where I have the yellow parenthesis, we have .json, and we call that one like so. And then we're going to return the users.results. We don't need the other stuff. For this one, do some order formatting. So this one is going to grab data from the random user API. Great, we have set up our API call. That's great. Now we can use this function inside our application. So let's go inside app.svelte, and we can remove some stuff here. Actually, we can remove everything here, the main tag, and everything in the style tag, because we're going to create new styles. And we have the scripts. We're not going to use this one here also. So just clean everything out. We just have the script tag and the style tag. And a Svelte component looks like this. You have a script, just a regular JavaScript in a script tag, and you have a style inside a regular style tag, and then you have your HTML, just plain HTML, where you can also use some stuff that's specific for Svelte. And you can have these ones in the order that you want to have them. And I'm going to show you a little trick now, because inside VS Code, you can see that down below here, it says Svelte. And that's because I have an extension that's called Svelte that I installed. So if you want to have a language support for VS Code for Svelte, you can install this one. And I highly recommend you to install it also, because it will auto format your code, and it has the Predator plugin Svelte installed by default. I'm also using Predator. And that means that we also can create the file here at the top, at the root folder, that we call .predator.rc. And we have an object. And we have something that's called Svelte sort order camel cased : I want my scripts first, then I want my markup, and then I want my styles. So here you can change order of the scripts, the markup, and the styles. And in my case, I want the markup to be in the middle, I want my scripts on top, and I want the styles at the bottom. So you use Predator for this, as this plugin has Predator-plugin-svelte installed by default. We can set it up like this. So that's the Svelte extension. And also there's another thing you can do, because this plugin has TypeScript installed by default. So inside code, we can go to preferences and settings. We search for Svelte. And I'm going to activate this for the workspace. That means that it's only in this folder and in this project. You can have it set globally also if you want that. And down below here, we have something that's called TypeScript enable. So I disable this one. And as you can see, it creates a .vs code folder with a settings.json, and Svelte plugin TypeScript enable false. So I don't have TypeScript enabled now, and that means that we don't have a lot of warnings and stuff that will interfere with our coding. All right, so that was a quick setup in VS Code on how you can do it when you work with Svelte. Let's get back to the app.svelte component. So we have our script tag here. That's regular plain JavaScript inside of that one. So we can import that function that we created in the api.js file. Import get users from ./API. Svelte.js, like that. And from Svelte, we're also going to import something that's called onMount. If you're familiar with React and the class components, we have something that's called component did mount, and this is pretty similar to that one. So import onMount from Svelte, like that. And still inside our script tag, we can call onMount parentheses. Then we can have an async function, because this is going to be async as we're fetching from the API. So we can just try this out and see if it works. And we're going to put this one in state. And also, if you're familiar with React, you create state with a useState hook if you use the new hooks API. But in Svelte, we can just create a regular variable, let users, and we set it to an empty array at first. So this is a regular let that we call users, and it's an empty array. And then we can just set this array users equals await get users, like that. And this is all we have to do. And this is state in Svelte. You just have this variable here, and you can change it to whatever you want here. But make sure that you always give it a new value, because you shouldn't mutate stuff inside of this. So you should still, if you just change one thing in the array, you should spread it just like you do in React. Otherwise, it won't update the variable. As they say in their documentation, some rule is that you should have your variable to the left of the equal sign and then assign something new to it. Okay, so that's our users. Hopefully we have them in the users variable here. So I also want to have this loading text showing when we fetch from the API. So we create a new let that we call loading, like that. And just inside of the onMount async function, we set loading to true just before we grab something from the API. And then we set it to false when we have grabbed the data. It's really, really simple, this stuff. And I love this with Svelte. There's no strange things going on. It's just plain JavaScript and really logical here, actually. All right. Then just below our script tag, between the style and the script tags, we can have our markup. And we're first going to check if we're loading, and we have to do that with an if statement. And in Svelte, you write an if statement with a hash sign, and then if, and we're going to check the loading variable if it's true or false. So if loading. So that's the start of the if statement. I create curly brackets, colon, else. Obviously going to be the else part in the if statement. And then we end it, curly brackets, /if. And this is how you create an if statement in Svelte. So it's pretty easy. It may seem a little bit weird before you get used to it, and that's fine, but you will get used to it fast. I actually started to love Svelte when I just been using it for an hour or so, and it felt strange at the beginning, but then it felt natural using it. So I hope you'll feel that too. So inside the if statement here, we can create a div, just a regular HTML div. And we can set a class on it also, regular HTML. Still, we can call it loading. We're going to style this one later. And we have the text loading and some dots maybe. All right, and inside the else statement here, we create another div with a class that we call content, like so. And inside here, we're going to display our content. And how can we do that? Because this is an array, so we have to loop through that array somehow. And just as we created the if statement, we create curly brackets, a hash sign, each users. So we have the users here. And we say as user. So this is what each element is going to be called inside of this one. So this is, may also seem a bit weird, but it's actually kind of logical, I think. And we can end this one with curly brackets and /each. So this is how it works in Svelte. You start your blocks with a hash sign and you end them with a /. We're going to create a user component, but for now we can just create a p tag, and then we have curly brackets, and this is just like in React. So we have the user, and I think we have something that's called name. Is it called name? I think, yeah, we have more than one name. We have name first, I think, like that. Do some auto formatting. So I think this looks really, really simple and readable. We first check if we're loading something. Then we're going to display the loading spinner, or in this case, it's a loading text. Otherwise, we show the content because we know that we have the content. Then we loop through our array with the each, and we call each element in the array user. It could be something else. You can call it whatever you want here. But it's logical to call it user, so I'm going to stick with that. All right. And then we end each with a / each, and we end the if with a / if. Plain and simple, just like that. And there's not much code to it, as you can see here, and hopefully this will work. Save the file, go back to our browser. And as you can see, we have all the names here, so that's working, and that's great. And the loading is showing also. Sweet, sweet, sweet. And before we move on, I also want to show you that you can do this in a different way. You can do stuff a lot of different ways in Svelte, I think, because now we're using this onMount, and they recommend you to use onMount when you fetch data when the component mounts. But if we remove this one here, I comment that one out, and we have the users here. So we can get users like this instead. So first I'm going to copy this one, and then I comment it out, paste it in, and I'm going to change this one a bit now. So instead of the if statement here, we can await. We're going to await the users, and then we show the loading spinner. And in an await, we can have a then, and we get the users. And then we're going to do the same stuff here. And we end the await down here, like so. Save the file, go back to the browser, and you can see that this one works equally as good. So you can do it this way if you don't want to use onMount, but they recommend you to use onMount. Yeah, and it has to do with some server-side rendering and stuff like that. You can read more about it at Svelte. I think it's a bit too advanced to discuss that one in this introduction to Svelte. But I'm going to use the other way. So I'm going to remove all of this stuff here. Yeah, like that. All right, just make sure that it works. And it does, so that's great. So that's how you fetch data onMount with Svelte. And that's also how you have an if statement. And also you loop through them with an each here. So we're going to style this, but I'm going to say that for last. If you're not interested in styling, you can just check this other stuff out. So I'm going to create a new component now inside the src folder that I call user.svelte. And I'm going to have my script tag, my style tag, like that. And then inside between here, I'm going to write my markup. For this user, we want to send in a prop. This may also seem a little bit weird. It actually did that for me also, because you export let, and we have a prop that we call user. When you create a prop for a component, you export that one as a let. So I thought about a way to explaining this, and I think I can explain it like this. You have to export this let here for other components to be able to use it. So we export this prop for the app component, so it can use that one to send in a prop to this component. So we export let user, and then inside our app.svelte, we can import the user. So import user from /user.svelte. You have to type out Svelte here if you haven't set up some nice little rule for that. So very important. Type out .svelte. So that's our user component. And inside of this each, we're going to have our user instead of this p tag. So user, and we send in the user prop like this. Yeah, and we have to close it like so. And when you have a prop that has the same name as the one that we send in, you can actually delete this one and just type it out like this. So this makes it very, very clean. Save it, and it won't show something now. So inside our user.svelte, we have to create our code. So we're getting this value in the prop that's called user. And here I create a new div with a class user. And then curly brackets. And inside the curly brackets, from user.name.first, and then a space, curly brackets again, and user.name.last. Do some auto formatting, save it, and hopefully this will work. Go back to the browser, and yeah, as you can see here, we have all the names here. So it's working. So that's how you send in a prop to a component in Svelte. And this actually concludes what I'm going to show you. That has to do with the Svelte API itself. I'm going to style these ones now. If you don't want to look at the styling, you already know the basics on how Svelte works now and should be able to start your own project and work from there. So let's start with the styling in the app.svelte. We have our loading div first. It's just regular CSS, so we have .loading, that's our class. I set a width to 200 pixels, and the text -align is going to be center. And I set the margin to 0 and auto just to center it a bit. Okay, so that's nothing fancy there. Then we have our .content class. I'm going to display it as a grid, like that. I set the grid-template-columns to one fragment and one fragment. That will make it to a 2-column layout. I set the width to 800 pixels. Should have a semicolon there also. I set the height to 800 pixels. The margin to 0, auto to center it. And I set the overflow to auto like that. Auto format it and save it. Go back to the browser and you can see we have this nice little grid and the loading is showing up in the middle here. Great, that's just what I want. So we can style these individual users now, and we do that in the user.svelte component. Okay, so we have the user class, .user. And we display this one as flex because I want to center the text in it. So align-items center. I justify the content. So I set that one to center also, and that one will center the text in this div. I set the font family to Arial and all the default fallback fonts. I set the font weight to 800. I set the color to white. The height is going to be 50 pixels. The margin is going to be 10 pixels. I have a border dash radius of 10 pixels. All right. I set the background to RGB 238, 174, and 202. And this one is going to be shown as a fallback if this background gradient isn't working. So we have another background, radial dash gradient. It's going to be a circle. We start with RGBA, parenthesis, 238, 174, 202. And we set the alpha channel to 1. We start at 0%, comma, and we have another RGBA, parenthesis, 148, 187, 233, and 1. And we go to 100%, like that. Do some auto formatting and save it and go back to the browser. And as you can see, it's working. We have these nice little names here. And that concludes this tutorial. I hope this sparks something inside you to try out Svelte more, because I think it's awesome and I actually think it's going to be really, really big. And I for sure is going to start using Svelte more. And I'm actually think I'm going to create a premium course on this one that is equal to my premium course in React, where I teach you how to create a movie app with movies from the movie database API. I think I will create a new course and create the same application with Svelte, because that will be a good practice also. If you already enrolled the first course, you can enroll that one. You probably end up with a lot less code and also think it's super fun to work with, because that's actually what I'm thinking. So, hope you enjoyed this one. See you in another one.